All right, so this video is going to show you how to set up your outline using NoodleTools, which is a pretty straightforward process. You're not actually going to do a whole lot of writing, you'll see, in the outlining process. Outlining is more like putting together a puzzle to piece together your research that you've done so far and organize it into the order that you want it to go in the paper, essentially. So a lot of your work's already done in the form of note cards. It's now just a matter of organizing those note cards in a logical manner. This agenda for today also mentions that page 7 of your essay packet contains an outline template, but you want to disregard that this year because that template mentions a counter argument paragraph that you're actually not going to write this year. So you can just follow along with the template I use in this next slide here. This is our appropriate outline template that we're going to use for this school year. Okay? All right, so to set your outline up, you just go to NoodleTools and you click on your project like I'm doing here. And then you go to your note cards over here on the left. You want to click tabletop view because that's the easiest way to set up your outline. That's going to pull up all your note cards. You can see that I just have 2 in here as an example. So you just check this outline box up here, and that's going to split your screen. You're going to have an outline over here on the right, and you're going to have your note cards over here on the left. All right. Then from there, we're going to follow the template in our agendas. So you can see that the first thing we're going to outline is the introduction. That makes sense. That's the first paragraph. So I just double click here next to Roman numeral I, the first topic, and I type introduction. All right. Then if I go back to my template for the next thing you're going to see, you're going to put your thesis in here. All right. So you're going to type thesis, and then you're going to write your thesis in here. Your thesis, I have an example thesis that I'm going to copy and paste from this agenda today. But your thesis is actually in your research paper packet. So if you go to the research paper packet like I'm doing here on Google Classroom, it's in your packet on the page that covers thesis statements right here. It's at the bottom of that page, right? So you can easily just take out your packet and type your thesis in here. All right, so that's all you have to outline for the intro is your thesis, right? Because when I look at your outline, I just want to see the bare bones of your paper, right? I want to see this is what your thesis is, this is what your argument is, right? You want to think of the research paper almost like you're a lawyer. You're trying to prove your argument. You're going to try to prove your case correct, and then your evidence and examples back up your argument. They back up that thesis. So that's all I really need to see for your introduction is your thesis. What is your argument? All right? Then if I go back to the template, right, from there you're going to see you're going to outline your body paragraphs. All right, so to set that up, you just hit the plus button, you click add topic sibling, and then this is going to be body paragraph number 1. All right, if you go back to the template, you're going to see that there are just some guidelines in here for body paragraphs. Each body paragraph should contain at least 2 note cards, 2 quotes. And I'll show you how to drag those over there to your outline in a second. Your body paragraphs are going to contain a combination of sources, right? So sometimes you're going to have body paragraphs where you have a note card from your primary source, which was the novel, mixed with a note card from a secondary source, right, from Gale. Or maybe you'll have some body paragraphs where you use 2 note cards totally from the primary source, the novel. You might have some body paragraphs where you have 2 quotes or 2 note cards totally from secondary sources from Gale. How that's organized doesn't really matter. It's going to be your note cards, your support comes from a combination of sources. The biggest thing that you're doing is making sure your note cards and how you organize them make sense within your outline, that they're logical, right? And I'll talk about that here in a second. Overall, though, throughout the paper, you must use at least 3 secondary sources. That's why you found stuff from at least 3 articles on the databases. The total number of body paragraphs is going to be up to you. I always recommend students have at least like 3 to 4 in their outline. I think that would get you close to that 4-page minimum you need for the paper. That's double spaced, but you may end up needing more, so you may want to outline more than that. But the total number of body paragraphs is ultimately going to be up to you. All that matters is that at the end of the day, when you go to write your first draft, you come up with a 4 to 6 page paper that is double spaced, right? And then you are going to outline the conclusion, but all you're going to do is label it. You're going to label it as the conclusion, and that's it. So I'll put that in here now. I'll put in my conclusion just so I don't forget. All right. As far as setting up your paper goes, like if I look at this example thesis again here, this one says F. Scott Fitzgerald uses characterization and setting throughout The Great Gatsby to illustrate the shortcomings of the American dream during the Roaring '20s. All right, so if I was writing a paper about that thesis, any good thesis is going to serve as a roadmap for your paper. If I'm writing a paper about this thesis, I would say it would make sense to have body paragraphs that center on characterization, that center on setting, and that also center on the American dream in general during the 1920s. So if I was outlining a paper based on that example thesis, my first body paragraph might be just about the decade of the Roaring '20s, right? Maybe explain some historical context, some background on that, right? So I would label body paragraph number 1. It's going to be about the Roaring '20s. Then some other major components of my thesis would be characterization and setting, right? So then I would probably make sure I added put that in the wrong spot. I'm going to drag that over here. All right, so this is going to be body paragraph number 2, which would be about setting, okay? Then I go back to my thesis. I definitely need a paragraph about, that went out of order a little bit. So maybe this one's about characterization. And then the next body paragraph would be about setting. Okay, now from there I may also want to get more specific, right? We know that The Great Gatsby, for instance, had multiple characters. So maybe body paragraph, and you have obviously a lot of note cards to work with over here, more than my examples. But you may want to look through your note cards first, but think about like, okay, so I could talk about characterization of Nick. He's important. He's definitely the narrator of the novel and a focal point, but obviously the title character, Gatsby, is also important. So maybe I want to do body paragraph number 3 actually about characterization also, but it's going to focus on characterization of Gatsby. Okay? So that would be body paragraph number 3 after my paragraph about Nick. Body paragraph here, this would actually be number 4. And we also know the novel has multiple settings. So maybe I talk about the settings of West and East Egg in one paragraph. And then maybe it makes sense to add body paragraph number 5 that touches on the setting of the Valley of Ashes and the different social classes and that dynamic within the book, right? And so you can see here, as I start brainstorming more and looking at my note cards and going back and forth between my thesis and my research, my evidence, I actually start coming up with a lot more body paragraphs than just the minimum I talked about, right? All right, now when it comes to actually putting your note cards in the outline, right, you need at least 2 note cards per body paragraph to support your thesis. And so like this one says language usage in Gatsby. I know that's kind of unrelated to this thesis over here, but maybe this note card touches on Nick in some way and his language usage. So just place this note card in the appropriate spot. I just click, I drag, I find the paragraph that's about characterization of Nick, and I drop it in there. You'll notice that a check mark comes up whenever you place a note card over here in the outline. All right? And really that's all you're doing. Again, outlining is not really about writing. That process comes later. Outlining is about taking your researched information and organizing it over here in a logical manner. All right? So just go back and forth, follow the template, think about your thesis, think about the research you did, and organize things over here. It saves automatically every time you add something, so you don't have to worry about that. And then everything will be nicely organized for you in NoodleTools, and you'll export it to a Google Doc when you're ready to set up that first draft with our next few lessons.